Welcome to homework.
In measuring the cost of living, it's useful to compare prices and wages over time. So here we're told that in 1980, a dozen eggs cost 88 cents and the average wage was $7.58. And in 2015, a dozen eggs cost $2.11 and the average wage was $19.64. So part A here, we want to first calculate the percentage change in the price of eggs. And you can see written in blue, I've got the formulas that we're going to be using. So let's start here. We've got the price in 2015 for a dozen eggs we see was $2.11. We're going to subtract from that the 88 cents that a dozen eggs cost in 1980. And that gets divided by that 88 cents that they cost in 1980. We then multiply all of that by 100, and what we get is that the percentage change is equal to 139.77%. That would be an increase in the price. Part B here, we're going to do the same thing but for wages. So the formula remains the same, we're just plugging in the wages. So in 2015, we had the wage of $19.64, whereas in 1980, the average wage was $7.58. Dividing that by the 1980 wage and multiplying it by 100, we're going to get that percentage change in wages, which was an increase of 159.10%. And now part C here, we want to know the minutes worked to purchase a dozen eggs for each year. So let's start with in 1980. How about that? All right, and so what we need to do is take the price of eggs and divide it by the wage per minute. So the price of eggs in 1980 we see was equal to 88 cents. And now we need to know what the wages per minute were. So seeing that their wage was $7.58, let's go ahead and divide that by 60 because that was the hourly wage, and that'll give us the wage per minute, which is equal to 13 cents in 1980. So taking 88 cents, dividing it by 13 cents, we see that each worker would have to work on average 7 minutes to purchase 1 dozen eggs. Now let's do the same thing, but for 2015. Let's go ahead and calculate right away their wage per minute. We see that they earned an average of $19.64 per hour. Dividing that by 60, we see we have a wage per minute of 33 cents. So let's take the price of a dozen eggs in 2015, which was $2.11, divide that by the wage per minute, 33 cents, and we get that in 2015, the worker had to work an average of 6 minutes to purchase a dozen eggs. And now we want to know for part D if the purchasing power has changed between 1980 and 2015. And it has changed, and what's happened is that the purchasing power has actually increased over time. And we know this by looking back at part C here. So because a worker in 2015 had to work for less time to afford the same product, we see that purchasing power has increased. Now, if in 2015, that price or that amount of time required to work in order to purchase those dozen eggs had been greater, say they had to work 8 minutes instead, well, in that case, we would have seen a decrease in the purchasing power because now it takes more time, a greater amount of work to purchase or to afford the same product. However, that didn't happen. We actually saw that decrease, so we can say that purchasing power has increased.